Good afternoon and happy Friday, Knicks Nation. I hope this Friday finds you safe and healthy and looking forward to a good and enjoyable weekend. Blessings upon those that are working in the healthcare field and the first responders, trying every day to save lives, and those that pick up garbage on streets and sidewalks and parks and highways to keep them clean, and those that make deliveries for our convenience, especially on days like Friday and all during the week. And then those that are double blessed, those that are trying to rescue and deliver the victims, the children who are victims of child molestation and pedophilia, the victims of pornography and child pornography, the victims of prostitution and child prostitution, the victims also of human trafficking and sex slavery, and double curses on the perpetrators, the perverts, and the profiteers who traffic in human misery. Finally, blessings upon the homeless, nearly 600,000 men, women, and children in the United States, and we're about to go into a recession, and millions more around the world in similar or worse conditions. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom. Brethren, so last night, as we know, was the draft. I did a live feed from the airport. My wife and I actually spent the night at the airport last night. But I got today, Ian Begley reported a statement from Leon Rose. And again, I like the way Leon does business. Again, if you've been around the Knicks organization or in terms of following the Knicks for a long time, then you know when you have competent management, you know when you don't. Sometimes people like to use this statement, same old Knicks. But I like to use this statement, same old Knicks media, same old Knicks fans overreacting. That's what we have now. Leon's not going public all the time. I like that. He's not in the papers all the time. He's not trying to make statements to draw headlines all the time. What he's doing is giving you messages like this in official form. And if you pay attention to those messages, he's telling you what he's going to do. Let's read it. Last night, we made 3 trades involving draft picks, which resulted in increased financial flexibility and additional draft capital moving forward. We now have a total of 22 picks, 11 in the first round and 11 in the second round over the next 7 years. We have the ability to be active in free agency as well as in the trade market. Our focus will remain to be strategic and thoughtful in our team building, doing it the right way, while feeding off of the momentum from the end of last season and prioritizing our player development program. Now, what does this have to do with everything that went on last night? Before we got to the draft, while we were going through the season, one of the gripes from myself and many Knicks Nation was Thibodeau's dependence on veterans and his lack of giving opportunities to some of the young players, particularly at the point guard position, insisting on Alec Burks running the point for most of the season last year. And that was his point of frustration. I hear people say we don't know what Deuce McBride can do, as if that's a reason not to play him. I mean, it sounds pretty silly. How will you know what he can do unless you play him? And we don't know if Emmanuel Quickley could run the point. Well, how do we find out unless he runs the point? Okay? And one of the problems with both the media and the Knicks, and I've even heard Ian Begley say this, coming off a 37 and 45 season, changes have to be made. It's not like the Knicks were some perennial powerhouse that we were winning 50 games every year and then dropped to 37. It's not even like in 2013 when they won 54 games and then dropped to 37. Now, that was a disappointment because of the veterans that you had on that team, like Carmelo Anthony, Chandler, so on and so forth. That's not the situation we're in. We're in a rebuild. And he referenced it here again, as he did earlier at the end of last season when he referenced the young core. He said, let's start at the end here. Doing it the right way, feeding off of the momentum from the end of last season. That's when you started seeing Obi and IQ playing. And prioritizing, that means making prominent our player development program. Now, in spite of Tibbs, that doesn't mean Taj Gibson's development. Okay? So he's telling you what the focus is, and he did it before, but people get confused because of the rookies that were available in this draft. Now, again, even I was telling y'all, for example, any rookie we get, and some of y'all know, ain't gonna play. Where they gonna play? We're talking about the 2 point guards we have now in IQ and Deuce, needing to develop. And some of y'all pining for some point guard out the draft when you got two that you don't even know what you have yet. People were pining for Dyson Daniels to the point where Berman saying the Knicks are going to move up to take him when he averaged 11 points in the G League on 25% shooting from three. And you have Deuce that averaged 27 and 11 on more than 50% shooting from three. It makes no sense. See, but people get caught up in the hype of the draft and start looking at these things without considering where these guys will play. I told y'all from the beginning, I told you, and you can go back and look, my three guys outside of the top three, outside of Holmgren, Jabari Smith and Paolo Banchero, I said Ivy, Mathurin, and Sohan. Y'all could bear with me. I said Ivy, Mathurin, and Sohan. Okay? In the beginning of the season, like before even the draft season, when these kids weren't even in the tournament yet, all of those guys were looking like late lottery, mid lottery picks. But then all of a sudden last night, what we get? Ivy 5th to Detroit, Mathurin 6th to Indiana, right? Sohan 9th or 8th. No, 9th to San Antonio. Okay, top 10. So the guys they may have wanted were before 11, as we saw they were going to do. And the Knicks tried hard. We saw them trying hard to trade up to get, especially Ivy. And I told you, when you go into a negotiation, you have to be ready to step away. I also told y'all, I wasn't sure if Johnny Davis's game is NBA ready, if he had the separation available to get an NBA jump shot off, if he was going to be able to shoot the three at the NBA level. I told y'all some of that. I told y'all AJ Griffin couldn't play defense, no good. And apparently the Knicks felt the same way. The only player that I wish they would have got, or two I should say, as y'all know, outside of these guys that I just named, were Tari Eason and Okai Agbaji. But let's think about this now. Let's think about Okai Agbaji. You still have Evan Fournier. And I'm hoping they trade him, but you still got him. They already showed in the news that they got Burks on the trade block. But you have Quentin Grimes. Okay? Where would Agbaji play? Where would he play? And you still have Cam Reddish. And of course, RJ Barrett. Where would Agbaji play? He'd sit. So the only real three players in this draft, in my opinion, that could possibly crack the rotation were Ivy, Mathurin, and Sohan. The Knicks tried to trade up from Ivy. Wasn't happening. So they went to plan B. Trade down. And as Leon said, they got 22 picks over the next 7 years. That's 3 per season plus. 11 first rounders, 11 second rounders. And he used the term that I keep telling you about, financial flexibility. Somebody was trying to count all of Leon's mistakes. Some of y'all just got life problems. You're not real Knicks fans. And you definitely not basketball people. Because what mistakes? Somebody said, well, he re-signed Randall. Okay, so you expected him, after a guy is all-star and all-NBA in a 41-win season, you expected him not to re-sign Randall? Some of y'all are just ridiculous. Then you bring up the Kemba, Evan Fournier signings last year. He was trying to get shooting in the lineup that everybody was craving they needed. He was trying to improve on the guy like an Elfrid Payton or Reggie Bullock. He was dependent on his staff also. Okay, so it didn't work out. He just traded. So he turned the 11th pick last night into a salary dump of Kemba Walker and the additional draft picks that he picked up last night. That he already said he's now flexible. He can use them in free agency. He can use them in the trade market. And in the meantime, what he really did last night was show confidence. Because if you know, in his young core, you know and I know the names that were being brought up to trade up. You know and I know it was IQ, Obi, and Grimes. Those names were being brought up. So apparently, he'd rather keep those guys than trade up and get a rookie. I don't see nothing wrong with that. He had a price in mind, and they didn't meet the price, so he stepped. So now this year, what do we have? We still have Obi Toppin, Quentin Grimes, Emmanuel Quickley, Deuce McBride, Jericho Sims, Cam Reddish. That's what we got. RJ Barrett, and I'm telling you, we're going to get Mitchell Robinson back too. Now, me want to see them trade Julius Randle still because I cannot see Obi blossoming without starters minutes. I don't know how they would do that. Some of y'all were suggesting, some have suggested that they play small ball. Julius is not good with Obi in small ball. He's just not. He demands the ball too much and the ball stops moving. When Obi's in the game without Julius, the ball moves. And in the offense that you want to be efficient, the ball has to move. Thibodeau was preaching that all season. And he was really preaching to a choir of one, which was Julius, because the ball would stop moving. So I would really want them to move on for the sake of this player development program from Julius Randle. Evan Fournier also, as well as Alec Burks. But I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to see next week because, as we know now, everybody's saying they're trying to run to Jalen Brunson, clearing $25 million in cap space for Jalen Brunson. But again, it's flexibility. You got Jalen Brunson. You got DeJounte Murray. I'm not even going to mention Brogdon. That's not even. And forget Kyrie Irving. Let's be real. Okay? But you're really talking about a Jalen Brunson. You're talking about, DeJounte Murray if he's available. And so we're dealing with that. Some of y'all like D'Angelo Russell. I'm not sure about D'Angelo Russell because of the lack of defense. He was pulled from close games this past season because the coach did not trust him on the defensive end of the floor. Now, what you think Thibodeau going to do? Especially after last year. So overall, I also think this was a weak draft. I told y'all this was a weak draft. I was trying and I said, it's like going to Goodwill. You can find some value, but you got to search. Okay. Leon apparently wasn't into trying to search in Goodwill. He wanted what was top shelf. Ivy, Mathurin, Sohan. If he couldn't get him, he was walking out the store. That's what he did. Okay. Johnny Davis was not going to play. AJ Griffin was going to spend the year in the G League. And he going even with his new team. Okay. Tari Eason, like I said, talent undeniable. I don't know what's in his head. He went, later in first round. Okai Agbaji is a good fit for a team that needs a wing that doesn't have Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett, Quentin Grimes, Evan Fournier, and Emmanuel Quickley. But we do. Okay? So there is going to be moves made. What they are, I don't know. I would not like to see the Knicks play $25 million a year for a 25-year-old Jalen Brunson. He fits the timeline of the Knicks. He does. But that's a little bit rich for him. $20 million to me is a little bit rich, but I understand that the hyped up market, 4 years, $80 million, that'd be too much for me. But We'll see what happens. Okay. But I like what Leon is doing. He's saying prioritizing player development. You also remember that Berman bore witness about Thibodeau stating privately that he wishes he had played the younger people more, the rookies more, like a Deuce last year. He wishes he had done that. And we know that this summer is going to be very interesting. So they did sign Keels out of Duke, and they signed to an Exhibit 10 contract Montero. Exhibit 10 guys are hard pressed to make a team. That's very difficult. That's basically a summer league contract. Basically, you'd be cut by October unless you do something big time. Okay, and this guy's a second round guys. Okay, so we'll see what happens. But with regard to the summer league, it's going to be Deuce, Quentin Grimes, and Jericho Sims with whoever, and I want to see how that works out. But it's going to continue what they're doing going forward with the younger people. We're not trying to grab no superstar. If Jalen Brunson can help us win more than 37 games, fantastic. I happen to think that what we got can do that as long as Tibbs plays them. And the problem with Jalen Brunson, aside from the price tag, has been mentioned by Ivy and a couple other people, is he's playing next to Luka Doncic right now. Y'all don't understand how big time that is. When you're playing next to a generational talent that's going to draw all the attention, that opens up the floor. And Dallas plays 5 out, on the perimeter. That opens up the floor for a guy like a Jalen Brunson to do work. Now, I don't know. The Knicks don't have the personnel really, unless they move a Randall to do that. Randall's going to occupy the low block. Okay. Then you got Mitchell Robinson, also one of the top 2 or 3 offensive rebounders in the game, statistically speaking. So I don't know what they're going to do here and get a Jalen Brunson, because it's different when you're the Robin than when you're Batman. When you're Batman, you got all the attention. And some people can't handle that. Brunson is a leader. He's a natural leader, very crafty. So I'm pro Brunson in that sense. I'm very zealous, though, to protect the development of IQ and especially Deuce. So I want to see what these kids have. And that's, to me, again, prioritizing the developmental program. Prioritizing, he said in the last statement, the young core. Listen to what the man is saying. Okay, he's telling you what he's doing. He's not trying to swing the fences for no superstar. I know the Donovan Mitchell crowd, like Berman, think that that's the case. He's not trying to do that. Okay, he's not trying to do that. He's trying to develop the young core. Now, let's see what happens next week. July 1st is going to tell us a lot, because it could very well be that Jalen Brunson has, through back channels like his father, let the Knicks know, you offer me X number of dollars, I'm coming to New York. That could be very well the case. Okay, he hasn't publicly said that. And Mark Cuban stated that Jalen said to him that he wants to come back to Dallas. If that's the case, then, okay, we're not going that direction. Let us not also forget about one Colin Sexton. We talked about him a year ago. Let's not forget about him. He's restricted free agent. Again, I'm very high on Colin Sexton because he's an NBA dog. Okay, he really is. He'll be big time in Madison Square Garden. Colin Sexton, yeah, he's that guy. So I really like him. And he's available, and so the $25 million in cap space that they're trying to create, which they got 18 right now. Let's think about this. With the trade of Kemba, they created 18 because the salary cap is $122 million. So they created 18 million in cap space. If they move Burks, that would be 28 million. If they move another Noel, that would be 38 million. Now that's enough to lure a cat like a Brunson or a Colin Sexton. I don't know about DeJounte. I'm not sure what San Antonio is asking for DeJounte. I'm not going to trade half my team for DeJounte Murray. Not doing that. That was done already with Carmelo. Okay, not doing that. But let's see what they're talking about if he's available. Okay, we got draft capital. Plenty of draft capital. Got some young players. We may part with a couple, one or two, if they want to do that. But we'll see. But I think Colin Sexton and Jalen Brunson would be the front runners to me if the Knicks were going to go outside the organization for a point guard. I think those two are your top priorities, as I mentioned. So we're going to see what happens. And the Knicks are in very good position to do a sign and trade if they wanted to do it. We're very flexible right now. We can create the cap space to get $38 million. That's not even dealing with if they move the Derrick Rose, who's also on an expiring deal. Okay? That's not even dealing with that. Because now you're saving another $14 million. That gets you up into the $52 million range. Now you got enough to pay Mitchell Robinson his $13-14 million. You still could go get Brunson or Colin Sexton, and you can still have cap room. You're not over the cap yet. So let's not trip about last night's draft because, your favorite player didn't get picked by the Knicks at 11. They could have gotten XYZ player who probably wasn't going to play. And they didn't. They worked out a lot of dudes because they were doing their due diligence, looking high, looking low, and seeing what's out there, which is what you want your squad to do. And they decided, trade out of it. I didn't think they were going to do that. I really thought they would trade down and try to get Tari Eason. And because he did work out for him, and I love that kid's talent. But they said no. It is what it is. See, if I want something and the Knicks do not, it's the Knicks' call. That doesn't make the Knicks the Knicks' choice bad because it went against my choice. And some of y'all think that way. Because it went against what you wanted, the Knicks made a bad choice. No. This was a smart move they did. They turned Kemba Walker into additional draft capital. They turned Kemba Walker into nobody wanted Kemba Walker. You had to give away some things but that's because they had accumulated 1 million second round picks. They used most of them, to get rid of Walker. Okay, fine. But they accumulated draft capital also. And so we're, like I said, I believe in the youth that we already have. I would like to see them play more. All of the guys I named, I'd like to see them get rotation minutes this year. I don't want no grizzled vet in their way. And so let's see how this plays out. It's going to start in 2 weeks with the Summer League. And it's going to start before that even next week, July 1st with free agency. So it's still buckle up, y'all. This ain't over yet. Leon's looking long term. I love it. He's not letting the media dictate what he says or when he says it. I like that too. And he's doing his work behind the scenes in the inner sanctum with the brain trust. And they doing work. This ain't, somebody getting 5 power forwards when they only need 2. This ain't drafting Frederick Weiss. This ain't that. If you've been around, you've seen those things. This is competence right here. This is chess. Some of y'all say he don't know how to play chess. I ain't even bother explaining to y'all. Some of y'all still tripping from last year's draft like he made mistakes last year when he brilliantly worked that draft last year. But anyway, July 1st. And prioritizing player development, our youth. Let's move forward, y'all. Forget this draft. Move forward. Have a good weekend. Shalom.